Hello class, and welcome to International Human Resource Management. This will be the first lecture in a series of lectures throughout the course. This one today is just going to be really quickly an overview of what is international business, and then some of the major events that kind of transpired over the years that gave way to our modern version of international business. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And then later in this week, we'll talk about maybe some management philosophies that came about that changed the way we viewed employees and the way we managed employees. And those are all important, not only for domestic human resource management, but also international human resource management. And then we're gonna talk about a concept that Friedman brought about, which was a flatter world, and what were some of the major developments, current developments, that made our world a little flatter and a little more accessible for individuals and for businesses. So when we talk about international business, I think we all know we're talking about crossing borders, we're talking about globalization, we're talking about doing business in a place other than our home country. When did the concept of international business come about? Well, you could really go back thousands of years to talk about these things. The Greeks, the Romans, the Chinese, they all crossed borders and did business internationally. But when we talk about it here in this class for our purposes, we're going to be talking about a more modern version because, as with management theory, people have been managing other people for years, but it's not until we really start studying and coming up with strategies, known strategies, and testing those strategies, that we can really begin an academic conversation regarding international human resource management or strategic human resource management. So roughly we're going to be talking about the late 19th century-ish on when we're talking about international business. So what were some of the major impacts that influenced international business, or the need maybe to be more international, be more organized when we're talking about international business? The first I would mention would be the Industrial Revolution in England. This was sometime in the late 18th century. So picture 1780, 1790 England, when people started to move into factories. Work began to get a lot more specialized. So all of this had an impact on the need to leave your home country. For number one, there was demand for some of the products that were being made. So individuals and businesses outside of your home country were looking for a way to get those products. But there was also a need for natural resources and other resources. So sometimes we couldn't supply everything that we needed within our home country, so we started looking across borders into other countries in order to get those resources. So the Industrial Revolution in England was a big contributor to the need for a more international perspective or focus in business. The second one was the steam engine, and for the next two, at least, I'm going to ask you to kind of suspend what you know in a way, because we really don't know a world where there's not jet airplanes and you can fly from New York to Los Angeles in 3 hours. We're not really familiar with a world where transportation was very limited. So when you have the invention of a steam engine and subsequently a steamboat that could transport goods and bring goods back to your country, you're talking about a major invention. The railroad systems were a major invention in transportation. So when we're talking about connecting two places, the invention of the steam engine was a critically important development. And also the telegraph. Again, most of you probably haven't grown up not knowing the internet and not knowing immediate access. But even going back to the beginning of when I started work, I remember getting our first fax machine, and it was a big thing that we could actually, that same day, we wouldn't have to drop it in the mail. We could just get a fax immediately. Well, the telegraph kind of acted the same way. Now we could speed up that communication. And think, when you have, if you're doing business in another country, or you have members of your company working somewhere else, that line of communication is very important, and the same holds true today. But in those days, there was really no way to communicate prior to the telegraph. So I would send somebody out somewhere to work in a different country representing my company, and I would have to rely completely on the decision making of that individual because there was no means of immediate contact. With the telegraph, that changed. Again, another major invention. Robert Owen's view of the employee, and up until this time, especially at the advent of the Industrial Revolution, employees were just viewed as human tools, right? I'll use this one out until either burns out or something happens, and I'll just replace him and get another one. The working conditions were poor. The relationships with management were poor. Robert Owens was one of the first individuals to really look at human beings from the perspective of what do we need to do to motivate them? What do we need to do? What do we need to do to keep them safe? What do we need to do? What considerations do we need to do? Because we're dealing with human beings here. We're not dealing with tools. So when you're talking about human resource management, that's a major development and a major paradigm shift in the way that we look at employees. And we're going to talk about some of those as we go through this chapter, or not even this chapter, but this course. World War I and World War II also had very big impacts on globalization. World War I, really, people started going into almost a protectionist type mentality where we're gonna kind of guard our own. We're gonna just worry about ourselves. There were tariffs that were imposed. Businesses across borders, really it was a very guarded time because of World War I. So that changed the way people thought. It changed back after World War II, and the most important thing to remember after World War II is most of Europe and parts of Asia were destroyed. The war took place over there. Buildings, factories leveled to the ground in England, in Germany, in Russia. So the United States was really one of the only players in town. We didn't have any battles in the United States, so we were a fully functional country. So after World War II, other countries were looking for products. They were looking for resources, and the United States was able to supply those across a large area. So that had a very big impact on the expansion of the United States, the expansions of businesses within America to other parts of the world. So those are just a few. There's a lot of other things that a lot of other technologies, a lot of other inventions prior to that. But in my view, those are some of the biggest that had maybe the biggest impact on international business, globalization, and the need to start thinking about how do we manage people across borders.